Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Stevie Dainjara Totolo from Gemini Multimedia Limited. Sorry, let me just adjust a little bit. I think we are there. Okay, this morning we're going to talk about interpreting shift. Yes, or when you give the floor to your colleague, the general rule of thumb suggests that we should give the floor to our colleague after 30 minutes. That's the general practice. We prefer 30 minutes because, according to some scientists, it is that much time that an interpreter can absorb in terms of processing information and delivering the speech. That's very important for us to know about that. So we highly suggest that interpreters should pass each other the microphone after 30 minutes. That's the general practice. But there are some situations when the speaker is very lengthy, or sometimes the speaker is too fast, or the speaker has so much information to share, and it's very difficult for us to absorb, to process, and to render in real time. It's a very difficult job. And this is where some colleagues prefer to give each other the floor after 20 minutes, sometimes 25, sometimes 15, sometimes 10. Because sometimes we have meetings when speakers are given only 5 minutes to make a presentation, each of them, and it could be maybe 10, 20 speakers. It's so lengthy, it's so fast, it's so dense, it's so quick that sometimes we just give each other the microphone barely after a speaker. So, like, I take the first speaker, and then my colleague takes the second speaker, and so on and so forth. This is the general rule of thumb. Now, some clients say that they want interpreters to work alone, but it is only recommended when it comes to consecutive for not more than an hour. If it goes beyond, we recommend two interpreters, even if it's consecutive, because there's a lot of information to absorb. I understand when somebody works as consecutive interpreting and the person goes for maybe site visits, visiting a client, and so on and so forth. So what they do, they generally suggest that the person should be on the move, and maybe there's not too much information to absorb, to process, to render, and so on and so forth. So we normally suggest that he can work alone. If it's, for example, an official visit, if we sometimes have a head of state who comes to a country and wants to, maybe it needs an interpreter for just some consecutive assignments, that'll be fine. But when it comes to conference interpreting, generally, we do not recommend somebody to work alone because it's very tiresome. The person can even collapse because there's so much information to absorb. That's the reason why we work in turn. It's just like taking a pilot or two pilots in a plane, unless maybe it's a private, smaller plane, maybe a 10-minute flight. So when it comes to like a commercial flight, you can never have one pilot alone. It's impossible. So you need to have two pilots to monitor and so on and so forth, because we've had cases where colleagues can just, sometimes they even pass on. Sometimes there's just too much burnout and they can't do anything. They get stuck. Some even got stroke in the booth while working. This is also the dangerous side of the profession. So the good rule of thumb, 30 minutes each. Now, coming to RSI, when it comes to the virtual interpreting on Zoom, generally, what we normally recommend is also the same time, depending on the length of the speaker or whoever takes the floor. So generally, we work 30 minutes each, but we do have communication via WhatsApp instead of using the Zoom platform because it could bother, even though some messages are meant to be private. But it's very difficult to follow up because there are so many participants who also follow up and make comments. So we recommend to use WhatsApp for the two interpreters to communicate and give each other signals. The known signal is OTY, over to you, and then I respond OTM, over to me. And then when we do that, we should always observe the microphone of our colleague. If the mic is still engaged, he's probably interpreting. And thank you to Zoom for adding the option to listen to the interpreter using the same combination as you. Before, it wasn't like that. You needed to have a third language before you could listen to your colleague, or you need to have what we call a second device to listen to your booth mate. But now, even if you work two interpreters on the Zoom, you can still listen to your colleague by just switching to the other channel as if you were a participant. So this is how we communicate: over to me, over to you, and then you look at your colleague's mic. The mic is muted, then you can check the floor to avoid, overlapping. And this is what happened last week. I attended a webinar. I was not working as an interpreter. I was just a participant, and there were two voices in the French booth. It was a big scandal because it lasted for almost 15 minutes, and people were like, we could hear two interpreters. So there was lack of communication, probably, or even if they did, they didn't watch each other's mic. And another tip is when we have to give your colleague the floor. What is the best moment? The best moment is generally either when the speaker's presentation is over. That's the ideal time, but it does not always coincide with your timing, with your 30 minutes or top of the hour. So what we normally do is the same person can still be speaking, but when we have what we call meaningful sentences with a dot, and you close the sentence, this is the perfect time you can just switch on your microphone and then recommend him to switch off his, or to switch his off. And then you can take over to just continue to guarantee that continuity, that smoothness, that flawless, and people will not know. People will just notice a change of voice. So if you have, for example, a male and a female interpreter, there will be a change of voice. But that's okay because the idea still flows. But you can't just come abruptly when the colleague is still speaking, switching off his microphone, turning off yours. That's not what we recommend, no matter what. Even if your colleague happens to face a lot of difficulties like vocabulary, or maybe the subject matter is quite difficult. We don't do that. It creates some sort of emptiness, vacuum, and abruptness, and discrepancy, and even in the listening, when participants listen, it creates a lot of disturbances. So that's what I can share with you guys. I'm Stevie Tutorial from Gemini Multimedia Limited, and this is it. I'll keep on uploading more videos for you. Thank you.